Welcome to the DTFC Side Project Advice channel, where we dive into students' side projects to give them specific advice on how to help them reach their goals. I'm Dan Rodriguez, founder of the Disrupting the Future Coalition, the DTFC. In this video, I get to talk with a student about his concerns with online classes and his potential solution of taking a year off from his engineering program. Welcome, Maddie, to the DTFC's Side Project Advice channel.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining. So I think I will hand it over to you, and you can tell everybody about the project that you're looking into. And I think hopefully it's going to be an interesting one for most people because I'm sure they're having at least some of the same thoughts right about now. So
I'm sure the students, they relate to this problem, but let me start by introducing myself. So I'm Addy, and I'm an international student at U Waterloo. And I just feel that online classes don't really meet the expectations, the value expectations as in-person classes. They don't provide, they don't provide one-on-one interaction as frequently. Uh, Asking questions is somewhat difficult. Picking the right time Picking the right time is difficult. Sending in assignments is very different. So I feel like a lot of value is lost when value was lost when learning was converted to online. That is why I'm considering taking a drop year. So it's essentially one drop year where I would try to learn things and gain experience, not through the traditional university route, but through hands-on experience and learning. For example, working in the industry or working abroad or spending some time learning new skills. I decided to take this project on to make my following year as productive as possible. To be very honest with you, I feel that this applies to most students. I mean, I rarely know anybody I don't think I know anybody who's very happy with online classes. And I've had this conversation with a lot of students that they are seriously considering taking a drop year right about now. And so I feel like this is a very relevant topic to talk about. I've looked at some possible pathways that I can take that don't involve online classes. Some of the pathways that I looked at were maybe taking a gap year or taking a term abroad, going to a completely new country and trying to adjust to university life there for a term or two. I also briefly considered uh, just taking one single term off, but as I'm an engineering student, my university does not allow me to do that. But I'm sure that is a very good option for all the students watching. I was trying to explore and make a list of options so I can make an informed decision, and these were the options that I came up with. So, like any other idea, this also has a lot of pros and cons. I'll start with the cons. Taking a drop year has one very obvious disadvantage. It will delay my graduation. And since I'm an international student, there will be some visa issues that require some attention. So, taking a drop year, in that 1 year, I will essentially not be a student, and hence I will not have a visa to study in Canada or do any kind of work. So if I were to take a job in Canada in my drop year, I would have to apply for a work permit. And through my own research, I have realized that that is not a very effective solution, or even I would say it's highly improbable, not impossible, but improbable. And taking 1 year of studies would certainly destroy the academic momentum. I mean, I've been in class for about, I don't know, a long time now. And taking 1 year off to sort of is a step away from that. And it would definitely result in losing the academic momentum. But this idea certainly has a lot of pros. By the time I'm back, there will likely be in-person classes. I hope things get better in a year. I really do, to be very honest with you. In this 1 year, I can work on a lot of other things that usually students work after graduating. So I can actively build contacts in the industry. I'll gain a lot of work experience in my time off. And a small advantage is I might even earn a little bit of money to pay off some tuition. Based on my options, I'm considering taking a drop year to work in the industry. But to be very honest with you, taking a term abroad is a very real possibility as well. So yes, I'm just looking at the next steps and how I can apply for jobs and if I can get a work permit. And here I am.
So, I mean, I guess to start off, I think uh, I'd like to commend you or applaud your willingness to look into this project, even because I think, like you said, that this is a real problem that I think a lot of students are probably facing right now. And then I think it does take some courage and bravery to actually set out and try and explore this option because I think the easy answer would be just to accept what's happening right now and just power through and struggle with the online classes. But I'm never opposed to looking at alternative solutions. I think that's a great idea, at least to just look into the options and try and figure out what are the possibilities, right? So I think definitely a good job in doing that. I think for sure your thought process makes sense in trying to weigh your options and figure out what would work out better for you. I think like one thing as well, like I think obviously being in an electrical engineering field where you have like in-person labs, like that's something that I don't think there's a good solution right now for simulation, right? And I think maybe that's um, potentially another project that you could talk about after this conversation, right? Is maybe there's ways for you to improve the solution where sure you do have to take online classes, but maybe there's better ways. And I mean, I'm not aware of what other universities are doing. Are they all going with online stuff right now, or do some of them have some ways of getting around this issue? But that might be something to look into too, especially with you considering the term abroad. I think that's um, definitely an interesting one. Not sure. I mean, I haven't been following closely enough what the COVID situation is like in all these other countries, but hopefully there's at least some that are better that would offer in-person classes. Was that the thought process there? Is that maybe some countries are better off with COVID and then they're already back to in-person classes?
So yes, actually, that was the thought process. I went back to India for a brief time, and I noticed that the situation there, well, it depends on how you describe good and bad. If you say that the if you say bad is a big number of cases, the situation is really bad there. But if you say that bad is having a lockdown and sort of restricting all movement, then the situation there is pretty good. So um, at least India, a country that I know, has opened in-person classes to a very large extent. So I'm hoping, or at least assuming, that there will be other countries that have opened some in-person classes. And yes, as far as labs go, uh, doing electrical engineering online is definitely very difficult. Yeah, you need all the hands-on equipment, and your you need your testing equipment, and you it's just not a very good idea to sort of learn something that is so applied online.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think like having electrical is my background as well, and from the hardware perspective, especially not being in a lab is challenging. I mean, obviously, when you already kind of have a base level understanding, and maybe you're doing some design kind of stuff with like online CAD tools or whatever it is, and then it's not always a problem to be trying to do that from home, but trying to learn how to like wire up a circuit from your house where you're either going to be watching somebody else do it, or I don't even know what they would be doing right now for labs. Do you guys even have labs right now?
So to be to be very honest with you, if I could sort of get circuits to my own house and learn that way, I would have never even come to university. So yeah, they do have some labs now. My last term was online. My first term of the second year was online, and the way they're handling it is the labs have been shifted to online. So instead of circuit design, we're doing circuit simulation. And even though I think that's an apt response for the situation, I don't think it is up to the mark. I don't think it does justice to the labs of electrical engineering.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, um, I think that's just maybe even a bigger issue just in terms of like learning styles. I mean, everybody learns in different ways. So maybe this new simulation model or strategy that they're putting in place has helped a number of people to learn easier on their own time or on their own pace. But yeah, for sure, there's definitely going to be pros and cons there. And I mean, I think that's probably a logical transition to talk about the pros and the cons that you've identified here. And the cons for sure, I think like you've mentioned, like delayed graduation would be one thing. Whether that's the end of the world or not, that's up to you, right? I mean, lots of people take a year off or switch programs or um, go and do additional schooling after they graduate. So losing a year isn't the worst thing. But I mean, if you had certain plans or you had certain goals that you're working towards, for sure that would put a dent into it, right? But I think definitely the biggest con, and I mean, maybe you can speak to that a little bit more, as the visa issues, because I think that's probably a challenge, and maybe you can give everyone kind of some insight into what you've learned so far about how that process works.
Okay, so the way I look at it is it's not really a delayed graduation. You're essentially doing what you would do 1 year after graduating. So I look at it like borrowing 1 year from the future. What I was supposed to do in 2024, if I do right now, then I wouldn't mind waiting till 2025, right? Because I'm essentially getting the same amount of work done in the long run.
Right.
And as far as the labs go, I know for a fact that you really believe in the feedback loop. So if we look at it that way, electrical engineering has been around for quite a while. And so over time, the labs have improved and adapted to the needs of the students. And a model was sort of developed that offers, I don't know, a good way to utilize those labs. Now, if we switch to online learning, they have just come. The concept has just been introduced. So there will obviously be a lot of flaws. And it's not a bad thing, but it will take a lot of time to be refined and perfected to an extent where it can sort of compete with in-person labs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely a good point. And yeah, the feedback loop for sure, like you said, is a big factor for me. And I think that's something that, I mean, it's up to each person to kind of figure out how to try and receive feedback or look for it, and then to implement that into the next iteration. But if when you're trying to do this on such a large scale, I mean, I don't think we can blame the situation in that they're not going to be able to move very quickly in updating things, because that's not been their focus. They were kind of forced in, or their hand was forced into this kind of situation, right? So to be able to adapt quickly and to jump into solving these problems, I mean, I think there's probably other priorities that are happening at the same time, which um, I mean, I guess the overall point there is that it's you guys, I guess, are victims of circumstance at this point. And yeah, I think that just leads us back to thinking that maybe taking a drop year is not as bad as it would seem, right? um, so to touch on so the visa issues, do you have any specific details that you can share about of what you've learned in the process?
So sure, I can share some details from my experience, but these might not reflect very well of the actual circumstance because this is just my understanding of the situation. So,
Sure.
um, as I said, taking a drop year would essentially mean giving up your study permit, and then I would have to apply for a work permit. So the way that works is there are two kinds of work permits. There's an open work permit, and then there's an employer specific work permit. So the employer specific work permit is something that is dependent on the employer, and a lot of paperwork goes into that. I think they have to complete a labor impact assessment and a labor market impact assessment, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
That process also takes time, and then obtaining a work permit takes time. And I don't think I'll be eligible for the open work permit right now. So those are the visa issues that I'm facing, and yeah, quite honestly, they are a big barrier to this idea. But I suppose there's always a window, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think what I would could summarize that too is that it's time is a big factor, right? So I mean, if you were trying to execute this plan now, as opposed to if you had started maybe like 6 months ago, maybe it would be an easier possibility. But I think like you're finding out right now, being able to try and circumvent whatever visa requirements there are to be able to take this drop year in a short time is going to be a challenge, right? So I think that's probably the biggest con. And to I mean to go back to your point about academic momentum, I think it's something to consider. I wouldn't say it's like the highest priority. I mean, there's definitely students out there in programs where they are required to take a 12-month or 16-month internship, which is essentially what you're trying to do right now, right? So I think it's definitely doable, and I mean, I think you just have to be willing to jump back in and reshift your focus. I mean, arguably the 4 month system that you guys are on right now, where you have to do 4 months co-op, 4 months work, maybe that's optimized for the amount of time it takes to jump back and forth between. But like I always remembered, it was you start getting into the zone of like the new 4 months, and then you have to go back to the old 4 months, right? So I guess there's pros and cons either way, right?
Yeah, it's essentially the same situation amplified.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean, in terms of the pros, I think there are obviously some good ones here, right? I mean, if you can earn some money to pay off your tuition, and gain some work experience, like a couple things that I would suggest, because I mean, I think we're somewhat heading into the direction of that maybe this is not going to end up working out, is that I still think you can try and leverage some of those pros even in the current situation, right? So there's no reason why you can't be actively working on building contacts in the industry right now, right? And I mean, I think one thing to definitely consider would be like how difficult is it to try and find a job? Because I mean, I think that was what your eventual plan was here, right? Which was to try and work in the industry, right? But I think that the job prospects right now obviously are going to be challenging as well. So um, anything that you can do, including networking, is a great thing to be doing, and I would strongly encourage you to be doing that even right now. Um, that being said, I'm sure we could have an entire whole conversation about how to network effectively, and maybe we will do that in the future. But definitely, it's something to um, put into your plan for what you should do next, even if you're still pursuing this, I think, or even if you decide not to, I think that's still a good option to take forward either way.
I get that. So my reasoning here was that I can work on actively building contacts right now, but say I work at a company and that company has a lot of clients. What that how that would help me is I would not have to channel my efforts on building contacts. It would occur naturally or automatically. So if there are a lot of clients and I meet with one of them and I talk for even 10 minutes, there's a connection right there. But
Yeah,
if I'm in school, I would actively have to um, sort of, I think, cold emails and reach out to more people and attend more networking sessions. So that is why I think taking a drop year would be better.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's definitely a good point. That if you can get into a company that's going to be automatic networking right there, right? I guess the thing to consider is what are the prospects like for that to be a possibility, right? Unfortunately, like the way the job market is right now, with the effects or still feeling the after effects of COVID. I mean, COVID's obviously still here and it's still affecting the market. So the number of jobs that are possible is also something to be considered. So I think I think realistically right now you're better off probably doing both, right? Is probably still try and attend the networking sessions or not necessarily cold calling, but reaching out to people or trying to connect and in whatever ways you can. And at the same time, trying to find a job, right? And I mean, that networking is probably your best path to lead you to try and find a job, right? So I think that kind of works hand in hand. So I mean, I think it's good to be considering both as you go forward.
I agree, but I would argue that the biggest challenge here is not getting a job, it's getting a work permit. So even if I get a job, there would not be a lot of advantage to it if I can't really work there. So landing a job is going to be difficult. I really agree. And it was, I tried looking for a co-op last term. It
Mm-hmm.
was difficult, but simultaneously, getting a work permit is going to be more difficult because that involves a very complicated legal process. So
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something to consider. I'm not sure what the difficulty would be for either, but the only thing I am fully or at least more aware of is the lack of job prospects that are out there right now. So yeah, it's I think you're probably going to hit a wall, or at least you're going to be running into some challenges on both sides. So um, taking a drop year in general is sounds like it could be pretty intimidating for most people. So I mean, again, like I said, and it's encouraging to see that there are people like you out there that are willing to consider it and try and figure out if this is possible. And despite the fact that it could be a pretty big challenge and not only like you said getting the job but actually trying to apply for the work permit and getting at it as well, it does seem like it could be possible. And there's I think the pros are clearly um, giving some benefit or advantage to you that you might be willing to try and figure out how to step above or break through those barriers. So I think that would be my suggestion, is to try and see what you can do to find ways to break through those barriers. But it's definitely sounds like it's going to be a challenge on all fronts. So probably going to need to really put some strong effort into it if you want to try and make it out the other side.
do you think do you think working online, so for example, the jobs they resume to in person, and I am not in the country, but I'm working remotely for the company. Do you think that holds as much value as being here and working, or is there no difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question for sure. It's something to consider. I mean, one of the interesting things that I've noticed is a lot of companies. I mean, obviously, being in that we're still in a lockdown situation, a lot of companies are working remotely anyway, right? So I guess the bigger question is what is what are the odds that by the time you get to your next work term that there's going to be in-person office or in-person co-ops, right? I mean, you might end up online again anyway, right? So I think that is obviously going to be out of your control. But when it comes to learning, I definitely think it's more valuable to be in the office when it's possible. But again, there's many variables to consider. I mean, relating it back to the lab conversation, if you're trying to do a hands-on hardware kind of company project or sorry, co-op, but you're doing it from home, is that going to be a great benefit for you from a learning experience? It definitely could be, but it might not be the same level. So I think that's where you have to think about what are your goals and what are you trying to get out of the term to try and figure out whether that's going to make more sense for you to be pursuing online kind of roles or hoping, I guess, that things turn around and you're able to do it in person.
I get that. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Adi. I appreciate your time coming on the show and giving everyone some insight into what the thought process is behind taking a drop year. And like I said before, I think it's great for you that you're actually willing to consider this as an option, because I think there's probably some people out there that hopefully you've inspired to consider this situation and see what works out best for them. And I mean, at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for you, right? So if you're not getting the most out of the situation and you think there is a better way, it's good for you that you're actually willing to take that step. So like I said, good work on this. And yeah, I'm curious to see hopefully you'll be able to come back on if you end up taking the drop year, and we can you can give everyone an update on what you've learned and how the process was, and what the results have been for you.
Thank you, Dan.
Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the DTFC's Side Project Advice channel.